Hello, everyone. This is another Black Conservative. I am Ryan Boland. Thank you all for joining me. What I want to talk about in this video is something that former President Donald Trump made in a speech that he gave. I think it was to the National Rifles Association, where he stated that if there was at least 5% of school teachers in America had firearms and had firearm training in specific, that we would stop a lot of these mass shootings going on. Now, what I find interesting about this before I go into this article is that I have the same assumption and still do have that same assumption, and I'm going to give you my reasonings for that assumption after I read you what former President Donald Trump said in this speech. So let's get right into this article. And it says, Indianapolis, Indiana, former President Donald Trump told Breitbart News that he believes if just 5% of teachers in schools nationwide were armed, that school shootings would be a thing of the past. Now, I don't know if it would be a thing of the past, but it would embolden mad men and mad women from deciding they want to go and mass shoot a bunch of people, innocent kids in schools. But we're going to go on. Asked during an exclusive interview with Breitbart News backstage after his speech to the annual National Rifle Association gathering here earlier this month was what is causing the mass shooting in the country, Trump said the nation's mental health crisis, fueled by drugs that are flowing across the border, is the main culprit. And I agree, among other things, and I said this in a few videos in the past about mental health issues and how that these drugs are fueling that. But I think there's also the idea that the drugs are causing the mental health issues, because then you have to be mentally ill. Because where's all these mentally ill people coming from all of a sudden? All of a sudden, all these mentally ill people coming out of the woodworks, and then they take these drugs, and these drugs fuel them. That's one way of looking at it. But the other thing is, where are all these mentally ill people coming from? You know what I mean? So they're coming out of the woodworks, and then they take these drugs, and these drugs fuel it and make it worse. I think it's the reverse, actually. I think that the mentally ill people are there's a little bit more to the mental illness situation, and you can watch my previous videos on what I personally believe a lot of these people actually are. They're not just mentally ill. I believe that they're Manchurian candidates. I believe they're under mind control to a large extent, but that's a whole nother story. Watch my previous videos on that. Okay? But yes, I do agree with this assertion on the idea that the nation's mental health crisis, okay, everybody going wacko, is part of the problem, okay, and that these drugs are fueling that. I know this personally because I work exactly in that environment. The environment that I work in is surrounded by mentally ill people, homeless people, and violent people who have violent dispositions. I mean, I just had a situation yesterday, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I might get into that at the end of this article, but let's read further. So he says, more than anything else, it's mental health, and a lot of it is caused by drugs. The drugs are flowing in, Trump told Breitbart News. We had it down to about 32%. We had it down to about 32-year low at the border. I heard today they're 10 times higher than just 3 years ago. Can you imagine that? But I think more than anything else, it's mental health by far. And a lot of that mental health is caused by drugs. Like I said, he believes a lot of it is caused by drugs. That is one way of looking at it, because a lot of these drugs and stuff, they mess up the mind and mess up the brain cells and open up the person to all kinds of health problems mentally. I mean, you can get into all the details about that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's part of it. But I also believe, as I said earlier, that there's other issues involved as well, because these people are coming out of nowhere all of a sudden. Well, actually, let me take that back. They're not coming out of nowhere all of a sudden. There's always been these mentally ill people going all the way back to the 1970s. The difference is back then, the mentally ill people were serial killers. Now the mentally ill people are shooters, which is basically the same thing in a sense is serial killing, but they're just serial killing people with guns, mass shootings, kind of the same thing, but a different scenario, if you will. But yes, okay, yeah, you can say a lot of mental health is caused by drugs to some extent. He goes on to say, the article goes on to say, in his speech to the NRA gathering, Trump called for a tax credit to allow teachers who are qualified to get firearms so they can protect vulnerable students at schools nationwide. Trump told Breitbart News that if just 5% of the nation's teachers, many of whom are military or law enforcement veterans familiar with firearms, then school shootings would end. Now, I don't know if it would end, but it would certainly, I believe, in my opinion, decrease the amount of school shootings. He says, so you have teachers that are military. This is what Trump supposedly said here in this interview. He says, so you have teachers that are military vets, and I'm talking about people that know how to handle firearms because that's a talent, Trump said. Now, I don't believe it's necessarily a talent. A talent is something that you're born with. I believe it's a skill that you acquire over the course of training. And anyone can acquire the skill of using firearms. I don't think it's necessarily a talent. Talent is something you're born with. Now, you may have a talent in the sense of dexterity and so forth and focus. That may be something that may be added to it, but shooting itself is not necessarily a talent. That is a skill that you develop over the course of some time after training. Okay, but anyway, Trump said. So it goes on to say, Trump goes on to say police officers, but you have teachers that are very good with firearms. You don't need many. I would say 5%. That would be a lot. You could never hire that many security guards. They have every bit as much talent in many cases. They're champion shooters and everything else. If they qualify at a very high level, I would let them take arms in with them. They also have the added asset of loving the students. They love the students. So if they qualify, I would have them take arms in with them. Now, let me say this before I read the rest of what Trump said. You notice the difference, comparison between the way Trump talks and the way these politicians talk. Okay? And you can tell the difference between them. Trump, he's kind of, the way he actually presents his information kind of seems awkward in comparison to a trained, skilled politician who knows how to get the attention of the people in terms of rhetoric. Trump is not someone who gives rhetoric. He just gives what he believes that comes out of the top of his head. If this had been an interview with a politician, okay, they would have had everything all organized and all, trying to name these facts, and they would have been good at basically capturing the attention of their audience, but mostly through rhetoric. See, you can tell the difference between Trump's words and the words of a trained politician. But if you really look deeper, the trained politician is more or less someone who's skilled in rhetoric rather than actually giving you real facts. But that's a whole nother story, and I digress. We'll go further. Trump goes on to say, in addition, I would have armed security at the front doors, etc. But you would stop it. If people thought that randomly the teachers have guns, they wouldn't go into the schools. It's true to some extent. Like I said, it's true to some extent. They wouldn't go into the schools if they thought that. You let everyone know that a lot of teachers are going to have guns. Some people say 15%, but I would say 5% is enough. If some wacko thinks that some of these teachers they're going to walk into have guns and they're expert and really know how to use them, you're not going to have a problem anymore. They're not going to have to use them, and that's the end of that article right there. And you can read it for yourself and analyze it for yourself in your own free time in the description box below. But I agree to a large extent of what he was saying. I do agree with that. I've had that mentality in the past. I still have that mentality now. The left obviously is saying that we need to get that no, the teachers shouldn't have guns, the security officers shouldn't have guns, but seriously, the teachers shouldn't have guns at all because that would scare the students. My answer to that is this: if the teachers have guns, right, 9 times out of 10 the guns are going to be in their dresser somewhere. So if somebody's coming through and they start shooting and carrying on, they can grab it out of the dresser. But the dresser or the cabinet rather, or their desk. Even if they had the gun on them and strapped onto them, I don't believe the students would be as terrified if someone with a high-powered gun comes in and starts shooting up everybody. let's be realistic. These students, when they see these school shootings, what's going on in their head? It's not, man, these teachers are if these teachers get armed, I'm going to be scared. I'm going to be terrified. It's, man, I hope nobody comes inside the school to start shooting us up. That's what they're scared of. They're scared of some random person coming in and gunning down everyone. They're not scared of the possibility of a teacher having a gun strapped to themselves, because the potential, now don't get me wrong, now the potential of a teacher going off and going crazy and deciding to shoot up his students could happen. But compare that potential to the potential of someone who already is a wacko, like Trump said they are, that's already armed and has already deadly intentions to come in and gun down a bunch of students and teachers who are not armed. You see what the Democrats, or the so-called Democrats, because really most of them are socialists and communists in disguise, what they really want to do is find ways to justify taking guns from law-abiding citizens so that you have no way of protecting yourself against the government, the tyrannical government they're trying to build. They know in their heart that a lot of the junk that they're trying to put out there to control you and I is going to be oppressive. It's going to be tyrannical on another level. They know that, in my opinion. They know that. So they don't want you and I to be able to defend ourselves against them. The reason, if you go back into history and the founding of this country, the reason why that part was put in the Constitution in terms of being armed, the reason for that was to protect the citizens from a tyrannical government. The founding fathers of this country understood that, because that's the type of country they came from in Great Britain. It was an oppressive, tyrannical government that persecuted many of these individuals, particularly the 13 colonies, persecuted them because they didn't want to worship God the way the state church wanted them to. So it's a whole lot of different ramifications on that. But the point is, the whole purpose really, within its historical context, the right of the citizen of the country to own guns was to protect themselves from a tyrannical government. That was the real purpose. You can add the crime and all that to it, but the real purpose is to protect yourself from a tyrannical government. And every tyrannical government in the past, if you understand history, whether it was Hitler, whether it was a communist, whatever, they always, one of the main objectives they did was to take guns away from the citizens. Why? It wasn't to protect the citizens from crime. Come on, man, be realistic. The biggest criminals were the politicians. It was to unarm them so they wouldn't have no way to protect themselves against their tyrannical government. They couldn't rise up against it. That's the real reason. That's the real reason these Democrats and these rhinos want to take guns from you. So they got to find ways to justify to do that. But the reality of the matter is, your chances, the school teachers and the school's chances of surviving a massive gun slaughter is for the teachers to be trained, obviously, but to have firearms, to be able to protect themselves and the children. Okay, that's the real, you can't just leave this situation in the hands of law enforcement. You just can't do that. You could do that, but what is law enforcement? Law enforcement are more reactionary. They're less proactive and more reactionary. You would have to wait for someone to get gunned down, 10, 15, 20 kids get gunned down before the police decide to come in. And even if the police officers get intel that there's someone about to go and shoot up a bunch of kids in the school, that's usually after the person that got inside the school and got the people holding the people hostage. Now the police got to plan, they got to analyze, they got to go through all this special, the SWAT team's got to analyze and find out a way to go inside and without the suspect seeing them. You waiting, doing this, shivering, scared to death because you don't know what this crazy person gonna do. It's not taking power away from the law enforcement, okay, but it is certainly keeping a lot of innocent lives from being taken. No child's life, no teacher's life should have to be taken for any of this to be done. We shouldn't come to the point and be like, okay, well, only 6 people died today because the police responded right away. So only 6 people died. It could have been worse. No. You don't want anybody to die. And the chances of anyone dying is slim to none if you have armed teachers. If you have armed teachers, the chances of anybody dying is slim to none, especially if these crazies, like Donald Trump said, or these wackos decide to come in and start shooting up kids and teachers. If they knew or suspected that the teachers in that place is armed, they're going to have to think up some other kind of tactic to try to come in and try to cause problems. See, but the objective of the left is not to protect people from mass shootings. That's not the objective. That's not the objective. The objective is to unarm you and unarm me, to take guns away from us. I guarantee you all the criminals and all the thugs and all the crazy people will still have guns. Do you think these crazy people that's doing all this mass shooting is going to give up their guns? You think they're going to come say, oh, you know what? I'm a nutbag, but let me go over here and give you my guns because you're right. We shouldn't be having it. Come on, man. People fall for some of the craziest rhetoric from these politicians. No, that's a lie from the pits of hell. So I do agree with Trump on this. I do agree with it. Yes, they need to be trained, and yes, they need to understand how to shoot and so forth. But trust me, trust and believe, your chances of a teacher going off and shooting the kids randomly because they go crazy or they're angry at the kids or whatever is far smaller than someone coming inside the school and shooting up a bunch of kids and teachers at random. We ain't been having problems with teachers killing up kids. We haven't been having problems with them, have we? Where? En masse, where? No, the problem is with loonies from the outside coming in and gunning down. So let's quit playing games, man. That's my view on that. What do you guys think about what Trump said here? I agree with it. I support it. Yes, they need to be trained. They need to be developed. And I would even stretch it as much as to say 15 to 17%. Everybody, for that matter. All the teachers, for that matter. But you know what? They ain't gonna let that happen. But what do you guys think? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. God bless you all, and see you again.